Sean Norton. I'm the branch manager of the Bill Britton Murray Hill Branch Library. I was on the Completely Booked podcast yesterday talking about comics and graphic novels. So I thought I would do it again because this is what I do. At the Murray Hill Library for summer, we are actually doing a chemistry program on Wednesdays for children up to age 12. And on Thursdays, although not this week because of the 4th and all the libraries being closed, we're doing a Star Wars Bloxels program. Beyond that, next week on Tuesday, we're actually showing Captain Marvel, and we have an excellent theater set up at the Murray Hill Library where we have a projector taking over an entire wall, fresh popcorn, so you should definitely come out. It's free, open to the public, and that's at 6 o'clock. Beyond that, it's just a lot of drop everything and read because we want to keep everybody reading every day, get your prize tickets, and keep those reading skills up. I like to read comics to keep that going for myself, so I thought I'd bring a couple of my favorites and recommend them to you. First, one that I mentioned in the podcast, this is Hawkeye by Matt Fraction. And this volume is at the main library in the teen department. And one thing that I really like is that the main character is deafened during a fight, which calls back to some older history with Hawkeye. And to get this across, whenever he's listening, there aren't any words in the speech bubbles, and people have to sign. So a lot of the panels actually have close-ups of sign language, and you can teach yourself a little bit of sign language and phrases based on what you see people doing in the panel, what you think they might be talking about, how they're feeling, and you can kind of infer from that what they're supposed to be doing. And comics are great at that because in a regular book you can't necessarily pick up on body language the same way that you could in a movie, a TV show, or a comic book. So it's an excellent way to build up literacy while also building up social skills. Another thing I mentioned in the podcast is that not all books are for kids. So this is from the teen department. It is a superhero book, even though Hawkeye doesn't have any superhero powers. This one is another one I mentioned. This is my favorite comic that has come out this year. It's called Kid Gloves. It's by Lucy Nisley. She's written 4 or 5 memoirs at this point. This one is about trying to get pregnant. So she has written a memoir about getting married, about traveling through Europe, about growing up with her mom being a chef. And this one, it's a nonfiction book. It has a lot of really interesting information I didn't know. A lot of this stuff didn't get taught to me in schools. So it's a really poignant story. So it was outside of the box for me. It's not something I would normally have read, but because I like the artist a lot, I thought I'd give it a shot. And I'm really glad I did. This one is also at the main library. It's in the adult nonfiction section, 618, because it's medical. And then we do have stuff for kids, for really little kids, like my daughter. She actually reads this one. Little Mouse Gets Ready. This is by Jeff Smith. It is about the same as a picture book. It's really short, only has maybe 8 words on a page, but it's still broken down the way a comic is. It still has panels, it still has gutters in between to show the passage of time. It still has speech bubbles pointing, which is actually showing up a lot in picture books these days. They're starting to pull from graphic novels. And this is done by someone who's really popular for children's books. He's done the Bone series, which is a fantasy series for children and teen. I'd recommend it for fans of like the Harry Potter series or Ranger's Apprentice. He's also done adult books like Razzle, R-A-S-L, which is more of a science fiction thing. So I like that he runs the gamut of all ages. Another person who writes for a lot of different ages is Raina Telgemeier. She mostly writes for upper elementary and middle school. This one is called Drama. It is about Callie. She's a middle school student going into 8th grade, and she's in the drama club. And a lot of her friends have aged out of the school, moved on to high school, so she has to make new friends through this club. This book has actually been on the Banned and Challenged list from the American Libraries Association since it came out about 2 or 3 years ago. And I don't know why, because it's awesome and you should read it. Most of our libraries have this or something else by Raina because she's one of the most popular artists working these days. She's also written Sisters and Smile, and her newest one is called Ghosts, which is more of a fiction book. The others are, especially Sisters and Smile, are actually memoirs. So if you know anyone who is just really into funny books but is maybe not super into graphics yet, especially any kids, I would highly recommend her. And you can also find her stuff at book fairs if the library isn't necessarily got what you want, if you want to keep it. All right. Let's see, should I do more superheroes or more funny stuff? I mean, I'm going to do both because I love comics. One more for kids. This is Sunny Side Up. 2 years ago, I actually posted through our social media that this was my favorite book of the year that I had found, and it's still very, very good. I wish this book existed when I was a kid. So Sunny has some personal drama in her family. There's an incident with an older brother who gets involved with law enforcement, and she gets sent to stay with her grandfather in South Florida, in West Palm Beach. And this is a really relatable book to me, partially because of everybody has something growing up that sticks with them with their family, and sometimes that's great, sometimes it's not so great. I can really relate to Sunny in this one. The other reason I like it is that they use a lot of reference photos, which means they took pictures and then drew over it and used it to make it look as close as possible to the real thing. And I have been to this place in West Palm Beach. This is modeled on Century Village, which is like a senior retirement apartment or condo area down there. And I was reading through this book one day, and I've been here. I've seen these places, and it's always nice to have that kind of frame of reference. You don't get that in your more fantasy or science fiction. Speaking of science fiction, my favorite Superman story. So I love Superman. He was one of the first superheroes. He was created in the late 30s. And originally he didn't have the power set that he has now. He couldn't fly, he just jumped really high. He didn't fight supervillains. He actually fought corrupt landlords and things like that. This was, created during the Great Depression, and Superman was a very political book when it started, and still is sometimes. This one is All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. You'll usually find this in the teen department. This one came from Murray Hill Library. We also have it at the main library. And you'll find sometimes this gets shelved in adult as well, just because everybody should read it. But the reason I like using this, I mentioned it in the podcast, but one thing you can do if you have a character with a history like Superman, you don't have to read every Superman book to read Superman, to enjoy Superman, because those books have been coming out since the late 30s. I haven't read all of them, and I've been reading them for over 20 years now. So this kind of uses that to its advantage. This is the first page. It has 4 panels, equal size. They're showing different gaps in time. They're not really playing with perspective or with the gutters, the spacing between the panels, or anything like that. And each panel has 2 words in a caption box. So there are a total of 8 words on this page, and they tell the entire origin story of Superman in 8 words. Doomed planet, desperate scientists, last hope, kindly couple. That is the first 20 minutes of the Superman movie, done in 5 seconds. Which means that you have the rest of this book to tell stories that you haven't heard before. And I think that's something that the movies are starting to work towards, and the TV shows are starting to work towards. A lot of them, when they first started making these things, were doing the origin stories. But how many times do we need to find out how Spider-Man got his powers? There have been so many origin stories. And they're starting to do, different things with that. Captain Marvel, which we're showing next week at Murray Hill, is still an origin story, but it picks up in the middle and kind of fills you in. And that's an interesting way to play it. The most recent Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland didn't show the origin at all. He just already is that character and doing his thing because you already know Spider-Man, whatever. I hope that you read some of these books. I hope that you read 15 minutes a day. You can drop everything and read with me at the Murray Hill Library or anywhere that you are. You can pick up a reading tracker at any branch library and get free stuff. Get free books for doing something that's fun and great for your brain. I hope you read some of these books. If none of these appeal to you, feel free to comment or email or call us, and we'll be happy to make you some other recommendations. Thank you.